big round of applause for Marieke.
Thank you, Milo. Thank you. Hello, everybody, and welcome at my talk. So my talk is going to be about 5 mistakes, or actually 5 lessons, I don't know, when scaling a WordPress business. And for those who don't know me yet, my name is Marieke from Rakt, and I'm currently working for Emilia. And Emilia is an investment company. That means that we invest money and we'll get a share, and then we'll help those companies grow. We have invested in multiple WordPress brands, but also outside of the WordPress space. And we invest in companies that either do open source, hence the WordPress thing, do sustainability, so have something that makes the world better or greener, or have a female leader or a female founder. So these 3 things are things that we typically want to invest in. But next to our investment work, we're also developing a new WordPress product. Our latest product is called Progress Planner, and we are actually one of the sponsors and have a booth downstairs. So please come say hi and tell us what kind of features you would like to see in Progress Planner. But today I am talking about something that happened in my past. Because before working at Emilia, I was one of the co-founders and I was the CEO of Yoast, before the business was sold to Newful Digital in 2021. So I'm going to talk about the mistakes and the lessons we have learned while growing Yoast. And some of those mistakes and lessons we're going to talk about are typical for every business and not per se for WordPress plugin businesses. So whenever you grow a company, you're bound to run into these things. And some of the challenges are really specific for WordPress companies. But let's start by taking a trip down memory lane. Did I tell you about this? This is a picture of the first office of Yoast. Our washing machine was right over here. It's the attic of our first house in Wiegen, and my husband, Joost de Valk, sitting there, he worked from here. Even before 2010, Joost was working with WordPress, and what he did, that was in his free time, because what he did professionally, he was an SEO consultant. And so he went to companies like KLM and eBay and told them what they should do in order to make their websites more findable in Google, even before Google. You're not old, you're so experienced. Yeah. But what he noticed is whatever I am advising all those big companies to do, I could also put that into a WordPress plugin, or to multiple WordPress plugins, so that everybody can take advantage of that, and not only the big companies. So that's what he did. And in 2010, when this picture was taken, the WordPress SEO plugin, as it was then called, had about 1 million installs. But there wasn't a pro version, because pro versions didn't exist back then. So it was a lot of work, but he mainly made money doing consultancy, and he mainly made frustration by doing sorry, this the free plugin. This is us in 2010. Yeah. We were married for a year, we had 2 children back then, and I was still working at the university, and I will only almost attend my PhD back then. So Joost was working by himself, and I was his only, well, not his only colleague. You had people that you work with, but I did some brainstorming with you and some project management. So in 2012, we began hiring. This is our team in 2012. I was not employed because if you ever have started a business, it's pretty scary starting a business. We had 3 children back then, so I was still doing a normal job in order to get, well, a steady income. So I was not employed. I did have my own avatar. So I was involved but not employed at that time. At the end of 2013, I quit my job and I started working at Yoast full time. And that's also the time in which we started selling premium plugins. And that's when the company really started. Because before that, it was mainly only consultancy. And then we grew like this, 2017, 2019, but this is not the whole team. And also in revenue. This is what you would like to see, I know that now as an investor, in what a startup should do in revenue. And we had an amazing time. It was really, really fun to do something That impacted the web because at the end we had 12 million installs. You're impacting something. We had a great team. We had a wonderful company culture. It was all great fun. We traveled the world. We did crazy stuff. We had fun with Jono. Yeah, that's what we did. So it was really a lot of fun growing a company like that. So why did you ever sell Yoast? Well, there are a lot of things. Maybe I would love to stand here and say to you that we all thought of this in advance. That we thought we were going to build something and then we're going to scale it like that, like a hockey stick, and then we'll sell it. But that's just not the case. We're both really ambitious people, but we also wanted to have a career that we could combine with having now 4 children, and also be present for them. So Yoast started out mainly as a lifestyle business, as a way to combine those things. But we quickly noticed that we could do more things, and we just kind of rolled into it. And so I don't want to say that it was only luck, but we didn't intend it to be like this. And then when COVID hit, and you have 140 employees, you're like, oh my God, this is a lot. So there was a lot of pressure on us both to have so many people employed, and they're all dependent on you. And then the other thing is that we were really dependent on the dollar exchange rate. We sold our plugins mainly in US dollars, but all of our costs were in euros. And that means that when Trump, the first time, was elected and the dollar course went like this, that means that our revenue was just evaporated. You can't do anything about that, because other challenges you might say, okay, we're going to work harder, but that dollar exchange rate was pretty hard to influence. So that was something that we were checking daily, and we just felt like this is not something we want to do. The WordPress ecosystem was changing, a lot of acquisitions. All-in-one SEO, our biggest competitor, was bought by Awesome Motive. So we saw, okay, things are changing, maybe we need investment or an acquisition. And then my husband was bored. He just wanted to do something not outside of WordPress, but outside of the SEO space too. So that was also a reason, like, okay, we need to find some time to do other things as well. So that all resulted in an exit in 2021 when we sold Yoast to Newfold Digital. And since about a year and a half, and on Monday it's exactly a year and a half, Yoast will be entirely out of the Yoast business, which is weird because it's still situated in my hometown, but in a good way, I think. So, 5 lessons. The first lesson is really important, this one. You are not the same as your customer. Because when you start out, you'll have early adopters, and they tend to look like you. The first people that try out your product are people that have similar problems like you. Even if it's consultancy, you'll find customers that they don't necessarily have to look like you, like physically, but have the same problems and have the same ideas about stuff. And they'll be your first customers. However, in order to grow, you need to find an audience beyond your lookalikes, because that's probably a pretty small niche. So what we did at Yoast was we talked about the Yoosts and Mariekes, where the Yoosts are the early adopters, and the Mariekes are not. So if you think about the WordPress system and also what Yoast was, Yoast started out as a very technical product, because he is a very technical guy. And you have like, I don't know, 100 of those tech nerds that all get why you need to have this product. But in order to really grow, you needed to have many more people. The bloggers, the writers, the designers, other people that used Yoast in a different way, but also needed a different tone of voice. So I wasn't attracted, that's why we call them Mariekes, I wasn't attracted to the very technical blog posts that he was writing, because I thought they were really boring. So we had to market for a different audience, but we also had to adapt our product a bit to get to a broader audience. Because the group of Yoasts is too small to grow a thriving business. However, don't make the mistake of neglecting those Yoasts. Because those early adopters are probably your influencers. So they're going to talk about your product. So you need to make sure, as a product owner, to keep them involved and to keep adding new features, to keep them happy, because otherwise they'll start using Rakt. And they do, because they have new shiny things and Yoast doesn't. So you have to keep up with appealing to that audience as well, because they'll be the one that talk about you, but also give you the best feedback, because they're your, what you often call them, your power users. So in growing Yoast, but also in helping our investments grow, we often talk about our audiences as in the Yoasts and the Mariekes. And this is of course a major simplification, but it helps you to get you focused. So you are not the same as your customers. You will start off with customers that look like you because you exactly understand their needs. But in order to scale your business, you'll probably need to appeal to a larger audience. And don't forget to keep nurturing the relations with your early adopters. And then, if your company is growing, you'll probably need to hire people. And that's hard. It's going to be really hard to figure out the qualities and to figure out who's best for a certain job. So let's talk about hiring family and friends. Is it a good idea to hire family and friends? Well, we hired a lot of family members. We hired brothers, cousins. I hired my best friend while we were at Yoast. And it's something that most people will tell you not to do. And if most people tell you that you shouldn't do something, they're probably right? And I agree, it can get messy. But in my case, what happens is that either if you're not friends with people you work with beforehand, I ended up being friends with people afterwards, so it got messy every time. So that's one thing. You can get friends afterwards as well. I think the main question is, why are you hiring people that you already know and that you have a relationship with? And I think the people that we hired at Yoast, we knew what they could do. So my best friend, I went to high school with her. I did all my presentations, all my projects with her. I knew exactly what she could do. So I was like, if we could have her, then, and she was great. She turned out to be good. So it's much easier to make an estimation of what someone can do if you already know them. So I think the only reason why you should hire family and friends is because of their capabilities and not because they're friends and family. So don't offer jobs because you think, I need to do something good for my nephew. But if that nephew is something you really want to hire, yeah, I'm not going to say that you shouldn't do it, but I can understand why people say that. So I also had a friend that started working at Yoast, and she left and I left, and we haven't spoken since. And that's sad. So that these things can happen. So I don't know. This is my advice. I don't know. No, I think everybody should make their own decision in whether or not you want to do it. Apart from family and friends getting messy, we made another mistake, or I made another mistake. I had a really hard time of letting people go, ending contracts, even after a year contract. But hiring is hard, and you're going to make mistakes. We made mistakes. We really had hired people thinking that they could do a job, and they're just not living up to your expectations. So how do you deal with that? Well, you have to address this. Even if someone is nice, even if someone really fits the team, you have to talk about that they're not performing. But what I did is, our company was growing, and I would see an opening in another department, and I would think, maybe they would be a great fit there. And sometimes that worked out. We had an awful developer who turned out the best community manager the world knows. So it can happen that you transfer someone to another department, and then they magically do flourish. But then it should also be something that that person would want to do, and not something that the puppet master that I was like trying to figure out. It was like kind of me in some way, but also lack of balls to really go ahead and say, I don't think we are a good match. If you hire people, you're going to make mistakes and you're going to have to address this. You can't relocate someone from a management position to an assistant position and then just stay on the same salary. People talk about their salaries and they'll get mad at you, and that's just all things, these things don't seem to work out. So my lesson here is, you need to say goodbye to people that are not a good fit, even if you like them. Yeah. Hiring people is hard. Careful consider while hiring family and friends. And terminations of contracts is inevitable. Lesson 3. A great leader doesn't necessarily make for a great manager. If your company is growing, and it's growing fast, you'll need to have managers. You'll need to have people whose job it is to tell other people how to do their job. Because up until a team of like 20, I think, it's manageable to tell everyone what you want them to do, or they can help each other. You can't do that with 140 people. So you'll need to have some kind of management structure. I think both Yoast and I have leadership skills. We know pretty good in which direction to grow. We are able to take people along. We can make people enthusiastic, and we can let those ideas grow and stuff. But I'm now only talking about myself. We're not good at managing. I have a hard time overseeing my own work. I'm really bad in understanding what someone else might need. I didn't understand why other people don't work in total chaos. So I am not a good manager. I become a little bit better in at least knowing that, or being aware of the fact that I am not a good manager. I like to coach, but I can't help people keep a plan up to date, or remind people about deadlines, or structure things. I hate that. So we were not good at managing. So you need managers. You hire other people to do that. But you also need a structure, because you need teams and stuff. But we were growing so fast that whenever we sat down to make like a plan out of that, we've hired 10 new people, and so the teams had to be rearranged, and people got really sick about that. Yeah. And what we did was we made managers out of people that worked at Yoast for a while. Just people like we thought, oh, you're really talented, be a manager. And if people are not skilled, then they might not be up to that job. They would not necessarily be fit for that job just yet. They probably will grow into great managers, but if people don't have the skills or capabilities to do that, then it's probably not fair. Yoast and I were both focused on growth, on marketing, on the world outside of the company, and that doesn't mean that we didn't care for the people, because we do, but we were not particularly skilled in making them excel. So what I would do the next time is I would be much more mindful about the number of people I would hire, and about how to create teams, making sure to put the right managers in place before you grow like crazy. So I would even say, okay, then we'll grow a little bit less fast. I don't think Yoast agrees with that. Okay, so structure a company, think about the structure, we did that, but always too late. Hire qualified managers, and not everybody is fit to be a manager. Maintaining a large plugin is really difficult. So Yoast this year had about 12 million installs when we sold the business in 2021. 12 million websites. That would have our software. That means there could be 1 billion conflicts with other plugins. Especially because Yoast is very heavily integrated with the editor, things could break. And things would break. And I think a plugin owner in the WordPress ecosystem has a very hard position anyway. You can't be too salesy, because people will call you out for that. They will create plugins to remove your banners. That's what they do. You'll be criticized by the community. Your free version has to be good enough. So you can't put everything in premium. And if you do put everything in freemium, then somebody could fork your plugin. Everybody could fork your plugin, Nowadays, you don't even know who could fork a plugin. But you really need to make money because you can't, you can't maintain a plugin with 12 million installs without making money. You need a big team to do that. So it's like a slippery slope. And sometimes that went wrong. So what happened is that we broke sites with updates. And then we did something with a banner. I'm going to talk about those. We had releases, and I have to say, we had them more in the early days than later on. And you agree? Yeah, because we did learn. But we had releases in which we made a mistake, because everybody makes mistakes. But in our case, it will lead to so many websites breaking down that this would be a big thing. And that meant, in some cases, for weeks on end, answering questions, having to deal with internet Twitter trolls, having to make patches and updates, and so working around the clock to make sure that this is okay again. For us, it felt like the world stopped spinning then, which is hard. And over the years, we became better at this. We had a wonderful QA team at Yoast, at the end where we were working at there. They probably still have, but I don't know them now. And they tested. So that's the thing we used to test with everything. A lot of automated testing, a lot of ways to make sure that there aren't any things that break with the most installed plugins. But you can't test everything, because I don't know how many plugins there are in the repository, but there are so many that the combinations are endless. So you can't really avoid these kinds of mistakes. You can, however, avoid this mistake. Yes, this mistake is what I refer to as Bannergate. It was Black Friday, as it is now. Yes, it was Black Friday 2019. And we decided to add a banner in the WordPress backend, telling people about our free plugin and about our Black Friday deal. It's a good deal, 30% off everything. We had seen other companies do it. And we just thought, this is a good idea. Yeah, we thought that, otherwise we wouldn't have done that. So in hindsight now, I can say we did not think this through. If every plugin owner would do this, it would look terrible on Black Friday. So we didn't think that through. Maybe it would break even. But what also happened is that some people, or a lot of people actually, they didn't understand why their backend all of a sudden looked so very differently. So they thought that their site was hacked. So all of a sudden, all these agencies were like calling us saying, what did you do? And you hacked the site. And what we also did is you could actually, this is so bad. You could actually click on the owl and then it would go away or something. You could shoot it. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's terrible. So the same day as we released it, we just like, what have we done? So we apologized. We created a new version without the banner. I think it was already on a Thursday. We did it immediately. But then the damage was done. We've done so many evaluations afterwards, and I can't explain this to you other than we were just in our own bubble. So we're in a small town in Wiegen, near Nijmegen, and we were just having fun with colleagues, thinking about how ugly can we make this banner. Wouldn't it be fun? So just with each other, and then you get in kind of an echo chamber, I think. We'd seen our biggest competitor do it the year before, but he's much smaller than we are. So he also got backlash, but we didn't know about that. So the backlash wasn't that big. We felt, and that's definitely got to do with it, we had done so much for WordPress core the year before, because it was Gutenberg and we did all the things. And so that meant that we weren't able to get our own strengths out of there. So our own roadmap had been, well, left behind because we felt like we had to work at WordPress core because Gutenberg was coming out and it's the only way to make sure that Yoast SEO was compatible with Gutenberg. So we had to. So we felt a bit like annoyed by that, I think. That also helps in saying, okay, we deserve to sell something, but this was not the way. We got so many reactions, and it's still something today that people ask me about. So many people were mad at me, and I understand, and I apologized. But I got threats, I got dick pics, people have all kinds of opinions. This is a hard thing. And I remember I came home that day with my children, and there was a man in front of my house, and he was swearing. And I was like, he's coming for me. He's really mad about the banner. And so I took my children inside, and I just went up to him. Turned out his car broke down. And there's nothing to do but in my head, it was just like the whole world is mad at me. Even in the schools of my children where nobody uses WordPress, and probably they do, but they don't know that I am that person. So it was really heavy on me. I didn't sleep for days because it was so many people say something about you. And in hindsight, I can't believe that we were so naive to think that this would not happen, but we were, yeah. Just it. So you should not forget how big you are. The only thing you can do in order not to break your sites, or break sites with your plugin, is a lot of testing. And in hindsight also, creating an atmosphere in which people can be critical. So I know our QA person said to me, I should have been critical about that owl. I know I thought it, but I didn't say it. And I said, why didn't you say it? She said, I thought it wasn't my place. I thought I was just there to do like the functional testing. So getting people to speak up, even about things beyond what they're supposed to do, is a good way as well. That's something we learned from that as well. And then communication. Communication is really important. When I started at Yoast, I did my best to remember all names of all partners, all children, and if you had pets who were important to you, I would also learn their names. And when you have like 15 people working for you, that's really not hard. I could do up until 40, and then I just couldn't remember. So at that point, I wasn't aware anymore whose grandmother had died, or who had a big exam, because we also interns and stuff. I knew these things when we were little, but that's just not possible to do in a company of 140 people. You can't interact with all these people on a daily basis. So what happens is your company changes and your communication changes as well. It's really easy to handle internal communication when you have a small company. You don't even have to do anything about that. You can talk to everyone directly. So if there is like a misunderstanding, you can just resolve it, because you'll notice it while talking to people, while having lunch together. You really don't need proper communication lines in place. People can and will talk to each other about everything, about salary, always. That's what they do. But they always will hear from you if the company is small as well, and then you can have the correct information out there. And when we got bigger, we did do things, but I think we did them slightly too late. So we had meetings with the entire company. We talked about new plans, and we celebrated successes, and we talked about how the company was doing, and that was us doing that, and everybody could ask questions. And why that is important is that you then get to talk to yourself and tell everybody what you think is important directly, without people talking to each other. I detest rules and policies and procedures because they're all boring, and I thought we wanted to be flexible. So if someone needs a day off because of a funeral, okay. If you have been volunteering a lot and you want to take a week off, okay. That's good. We thought if we're good for our employees, they'll be good for you. That's it. That was our entire HR strategy. But as your company is growing, you can't talk to everyone yourselves. You get an HR department, and they have to make decisions like that now. And we didn't have anything in writing because I hated policies. And then that's really hard, because then that HR department is going to make decisions, but they're not necessarily aligned with what you're thinking. So what you should do is put these things in writing. I always thought that policies and procedures would make things more businessy, that it would become less friendly. But that all depends on what you write down and how you write it down. I think these policies will make sure that your company culture remains intact. So I think we did a pretty good job in this, but I had a hard time facing the fact that if your company grows, then the company changes. So you just need to accept that, and you need to put in place some things that make sure that those are aligned with the phase your company is in. I wanted to hold on to knowing all my employees, and I waited far too long with making policies and all these things. Because if your company grows, you'll need to lead it differently. So, 5 lessons, and then you'll do it all perfectly. Yeah, you're not the same as your customer. Hiring people is really hard. A great leader doesn't make for a great manager. Maintaining a large plugin is difficult, and banners are not okay. Communication is key. That's it. Thank you.
Let's open up for some questions. But first, I'm not letting that banners go just like that. If someone shows up now to Emilia, and they say like, you know what, we have this business around banners, would you invest in that company?
Depending on what kind of banners they are.
The one that you can shoot out?
Who thought of that? I didn't. This was not my idea.
Where is John? John, did you think about it? Okay, questions? This will take a while.
Yes.
Sorry,
Did you actually see any increase in revenue because of that?
Yeah, a lot.
Made a ton of money.
A lot. We made a lot of money. Yeah. So people, and I also, when I told this to my mother, who was not in the WordPress space, she was like, "But it's your free product, and you're offering a nice discount. Why are those people upset?" So there was a group of people that was upset. There was a group of people that bought Yoast SEO Premium. Yeah, we made a lot of money, right? It was our best Black Friday ever.
Hi. Actually, I have a question about the exit. I heard often there is some kind of a post-exit blues.
Yeah.
Did you prepare for that somehow, or?
I don't think you can ever prepare for that. I was aware of the fact, and it's true. So I've really had to mourn exiting Yoast. My brother has sold a company very early on in his life, and he warned me about that. So I knew it could happen, and we had a good lawyer that put everything in place so that we could leave if we would want to leave, because it's really hard to stay in a company when you don't own it, but you have to stay aligned, because sometimes you have to. We didn't. The point in which I left Yoast was not the point that I decided myself. So it was kind of like, now it's time to leave, Marieke. And that's hard. It is. But also understandable. I do understand it. And I live in the same town as the office. So it remains interesting. But I think I'm doing good now. Yeah, no, it's getting better. We have tackle.
Still tackle back.
Hi, Marieke. Thank you for your talk. You told us about 5 things that you have learned, and I was wondering, is there anything that you haven't learned yet going forward that you would like to learn, that you think, like, hey, that's something that I wish I knew how to do better?
Structure my work. But I think, yeah, there are a lot of things. This is a very personal question. There's a lot of things that I would love to learn. I think, especially the business world and the investment world still scares me a lot. There are a lot of, I don't know, all these people talk with difficult words, and so I'm easily intimidated by things I shouldn't be intimidated by. But I only realized that like much later on. And I noticed that I still do this, so I haven't learned anything from that. Yeah.
Of these 5 lessons, are there some you will avoid actually engaging in with in India? So having 150 next employees and stuff like that?
Yeah, I would put in place better structure. I don't think, but these are our famous last words, so they're already laughing. Because at Yoast we also said, no, we're not going to hire anyone anymore, and then we would. We also said, no, we're not going to have children anymore, and then our 4th child was born. So this is like, I know, this is the thing I haven't learned yet. I don't think 150 people is something that I didn't enjoy the company as much at that point anymore. So I think up until there were like 70, I had such a good time. And then, no, we're not going to, it doesn't fit the building. Yeah, Oscar. No, so that's at least not my goal. And if it happens, then you can laugh at me later on. Yeah, you should.
Next, Brooklyn, 150 employees in the capital.
Well, we're here with 12, so.
Yeah.
And they're not hiring.
No, we're not hiring. Yet.
Are you just hiring remote now, or?
No. No, we have 2 people working remote, and I think 10 in our 4. Oh, sorry, John was 7.
I mean, they are increasing a lot.
No, they just feel like they're. No, we have 4 people working remote, and 6 or 7 in our office. Yeah, 7. I'm sorry, we have 7. That's quite a lot, right? But not 140. No, it's 10%.
Questions?
Yes.
Thank you for your talk. As someone going from a developer to a manager role, what are some of the things you have noticed that make the transition easier to get into this role and training yourself?
So in that case, I think having development skills in any profession in a WordPress company is really valuable. So the fact that this person, which is Taco, had development skills but wasn't necessarily a good developer, helped him to get into that other role. But I now would be hesitant because this was the first time I did this successfully, and I just thought, this is the solution! We have a nice person, he can't do his job, we'll find another job! And that just, it can work out, but these are exceptions. I think in most cases, if you're honest about, like, is this person good in this kind of environment, probably the answer is no, and then you have to just say goodbye. That means ending a contract after a year. I found it hard to end the contract after a year. That's not even firing someone, that's just, this is, your contract ends, bye-bye, here is a nice gift. I should do that more often. We now just hire people that we already know from Yoast. Hey, we hired one person that we didn't have at Yoast, and he's turned out great. So, yeah.
On the beginning of your talk, you shared that photo where it was just like you two working. Do you still miss that place where it was just like 2 of you working on
the attic?
Yeah.
I don't miss that place, it was really small. No, but it is like, it was a nice, if I look back at that time, and also our children were really small, so it's also like that time in my life was really nice. Yeah, I enjoyed the entire growth of Yoast. If I look back at it, I think that was such a wonderful period. Yeah. And but sometimes some things end and new things will be put in place. We now have a much nicer house. And we still have an office in the attic.
Some things will never change. Cool. Wow, that's a lot of questions. I have a gift.
You have a gift for me?
Yes.
Great.
Small token appreciation.
Thank you. at you.
Can we get a big round of applause for Marieke?